This is Sales Players, and I'm your host, Jesse Woodbury. I've spent my career selling for early stage companies, and now I'm on a mission to help reps and operators find tips, strategies, and resources for generating more pipeline, closing more deals, and building wealth in tech sales. To learn more, visit salesplayers.co. All right, we're live. What's up, Sales Players? Jesse here, and we've got a very important topic to discuss in today's episode. And this actually came from your feedback. A few episodes back, if you remember, I made a very specific ask, which was to let me know what keeps you coming back to the show and what topics you want to hear more about. And one of the trends that I saw was sales mindset and mindset in general, both as a reason to keep coming back to this show and something that everyone wants to hear more about. So I thought I'd dedicate a whole episode to some mindset work that you can do as a seller, especially right now in 2025. We all know it's tough out there. But before we get into it, I want to give you a quick heads up that I am putting out a digital resource called Commission Impossible. And it's actually a no-nonsense guide, everything you need to know before you join a startup in a revenue-focused role. This is the guide I wish I would have had before I joined as the first AE hire at 2 different startups years ago. The guide itself will be available the first week of May, so you can actually pre-order it right now. It's $27, so be sure to get your copy of it. This is really a must-have resource if you're at all considering working in a startup, especially right now. You're going to want to get my framework for evaluating startup opportunities as a seller. So go check that out. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to go and pre-order your copy today. Now, let's get into the mindset stuff. So the first mindset shift that I'm going to share actually came from my time working in an early startup when I lived in Austin. This was said to me by an executive sales leader who was running our team at the time. And I don't know that I fully understood it when he first shared this. But over the years, I've thought more and more about this, and I've thought about how it applies to me. And so the first principle here, the first mindset shift is that sales is a lifestyle. It's not a career. Sales is a lifestyle and not a career. Think about that for a second. This is not really a 9-to-5 job. This is your life. It's your lifestyle. And I hate to say it that way because I also don't want to encourage sort of the hustle culture or the burnout culture, whatever you want to call it. The reality is we're in a line of work that is more of a lifestyle than it is a 9-to-5 job or career, because there's going to be peaks and valleys throughout the course of your year. You're going to have end of quarter nights that are late. You're going to get into deep deal cycles that are going to require a lot of hours input. But then you're also going to have periods of time where you're at your number and you're able to sort of take a breath and step away and enjoy your life. And that's actually what I love about this industry. There has been some amazing periods of my career where I've been over my quota, over my attainment numbers, and I'm able to step away and travel and do the things that I love to do and do the things I'm passionate about. But I also know that with that comes periods of time where I've got to put my head down and work really hard. And it goes along really nicely with, I think it's Jeff Bezos that talks about work-life integration. I actually tend to think of things the same way. How can I manage my daily life, but incorporating in the things that I need to do to be successful as a seller? And so think of yourself as someone who's striving towards work-life integration, but think of sales as your lifestyle and not just your career. So that's a big mindset shift. And again, you might not get it this first time. I know I didn't when this was first said to me, but over time I've thought about it more and I realized that this is really not just a standard career. It's very much your lifestyle. And being in sales mindset is part of who you are. So that's the first one. Let me go into the second one. A lot of times you hear people talk about how sellers are the CEO of their territory, or they're the CEO of their book of business, or whatever. But I actually disagree with the CEO of your territory statement. The reason I do is because think about what a CEO does, especially a CEO of like a publicly traded company. They're the person that has a board of directors advising them that they are, accountable to. If they're a public company CEO, they have stockholders all over the world that are in the, millions and millions of people hold stock in the company, right? They tend to be focused on the brand and the vision and the direction of the company, and they're steering the ship. CEOs also delegate things. Most Fortune 500 CEOs are not necessarily hands-on, but rather they're orchestrating layers and layers of hierarchy to go and execute on different projects. Now, if you think about your day-to-day as an account executive at a software company, you're not like a CEO. Let's be real here. But you are kind of like a franchisee. And someone said this to me years ago, and it really stuck. And it's how I think about the work that I do. I am a franchisee of my company. I own a small portion of a regional territory, right? So I have a regional book of business that's accounts in a specific area of the country, just like a franchisee would. You know, if I owned a McDonald's or a Chick-fil-A in Tempe, Arizona, then that would be my franchise, and I'd be responsible for selling as many sandwiches as I could in Tempe. So that's the example that I think about is we're like, as sellers, we're like franchisees. We're responsible for a geographic region or a book of business. We're not necessarily responsible for driving the direction of the company or the brand. We're not in charge of the vision. We can seldomly delegate things out. There's definitely some delegation you can do as an account executive, and I want to do a whole episode later on some levers you can pull there to maximize your time and your energy. But for the most part, you can't really delegate things down to anybody as an account executive. There's just not the resources there to do that. And so franchisees, though, have access to marketing collateral, typically from the parent company. They're responsible for a specific region, and they have ownership in the performance of that specific region. So start thinking of yourself as a franchisee of the company that you work for, and maybe study some franchises. What do people do to have a successful McDonald's franchise? And I know there's probably a lot of those, and it's a little bit different still. It's still not a perfect fit, but I think it's better than the whole CEO of your territory thing people always say. So the next one that I put down, sort of in that same thread, is that probably the biggest shift I had in my career was about 10 years ago. I stopped thinking of myself as a salesperson, and I started to think of myself as an advisor to my clients. And if you can figure out how to do this, I promise you're going to close a lot more deals that way. You're going to build a lot of trust and authenticity with your buyers, and that's going to lead to a lot more deals. So some ways that you can do that is to, as best as possible, practice the mindset of detaching from the outcome. Tell yourself that no matter what happens, you're going to deliver everything you can, but you can't force anyone to make a decision, right? You can't force anyone to sign a contract with you. All you can do is deliver your best quality work, field resources for your buyers and your prospects, and show up, prepare, have a hypothesis, come to every conversation with a point of view. And as you do these things, you will build trust and credibility in your cycles, and it will help you ultimately get the deals done. You can't let your buyers think that your focus is hitting some arbitrary quota or some revenue target or making some specific size commission check. You have to show up as a consultant to their company and help them solve problems in their business. And as you do that, you'll become a more successful seller. And it also is a lot more fun that way. You start to feel like a partner in your deals instead of an opponent in your deals. So that's another one for you. The other one that I put down that was a really big one, a sales leader of mine told me this years ago, was every significant deal, and really almost every big deal that you do in your enterprise selling career, there's going to be 2 or 3 points in that deal cycle where you feel like you've completely lost it, where there's just no path forward, there's no chance you're going to win. And then suddenly after 2 or 3 of those, you'll get the email saying, go ahead and send the DocuSign for signature. And that's a really important truth in enterprise selling, especially, is that there'll be 2 or 3 times that it feels like you've completely lost the deal. And then suddenly prospect comes back and says, let's go ahead and move this forward, send over the DocuSign for signature. I don't know why that is, but you will feel like you lose a deal 2 to 3 times before you win it. It's just one of those constants that you always see. So be prepared for it. Get into the headspace that the first time you get a friction point from a buyer, just know that it's probably the first of those 2 or 3 times that it's going to feel like you lost the deal. Keep going, keep problem solving and trying to negotiate to get there, and you will. So that's another one for you. The next one I wrote down, another sales leader shared this with me years ago. This particular leader was telling me about how he had achieved a 7-figure W-2. And I was fortunate to be in person with him, and I asked him, I said, what do you think you did that year that you hit 7 figures that set you apart from everyone else on your team, and that might have been different from everything else you'd done up to that point in your career? And he kind of he paused for a while, and then he came back with the response that everyone who hits that kind of target in their sales career has to have the exact right size chip on their shoulder. What he meant by that, and again, I've thought about this for years since I had this conversation, was what does that mean? And he elaborated a little bit, but he said something to the extent of, you meet a lot of sales reps who have a really big chip on their shoulder. And those people are always going to make excuses, and it's always going to be sort of a victim mentality. And they're going to go around saying, well, the deal didn't close because that customer sucks, or the deal didn't close because I didn't have the resources I needed to get the deal done, or our messaging sucks, or this or that. And that's a big chip on the shoulder person. Then there's like a small chip on the shoulder person, which is someone who's just like maybe more of like a type B person. And you don't find a lot of these honestly in tech sales, but they are out there. And that's someone who's like, oh, well, I can't be bothered to follow up quickly with these prospects because that would take energy, you know? So they're not fighting, they're not, clawing their way to success, but they're also not completely in the shadow of this chip on their shoulder. So you want to have the right size chip on your shoulder, just somewhere in the middle of that. You can't be someone who's just not driven enough, but you can't be someone who's got such a big chip on your shoulder that you walk around complaining about everything and making excuses and blaming things on everybody else. So an interesting one to think about. See if you have a chip on your shoulder. And if you do some introspection and figure out, do you have a really big chip on your shoulder? Or maybe is your chip not deep enough to go about having a big sales year and closing massive deals and having a big W-2? Here's an interesting one, which is doing the CRM stuff in your day-to-day as part of your job. It's a part of your operating procedures. This is a hard one, especially for more tenured reps. When I was coming up in my career as an SDR, we would work with these field reps who'd been doing it since the 90s. And it was always funny because to get them to update anything in Salesforce was like this impossible task. It was like pulling teeth to get one of these reps to go in and update an opportunity or add a contact into Salesforce. They just wouldn't do it. People are getting better, and it's now more of a standard process. And there's less of the sort of road warrior persona in the industry, meaning, people that were out on the road all the time in person, delivering presentations and demos that way. And the excuse for those folks was always, well, I'm driving, I can't update Salesforce. That's more or less gone away, but I still think that there's a lot of work that we need to do collectively as sellers to make sure that we are running a strong operation in our territory. Going back to the franchisee comments that I made earlier, you want to be a good owner of your business, and you want to make sure that you have a tidy operation. And what that means to me is that you keep your CRM updated with next steps. All of your contact data is in there. You leave really good notes in your CRM about all the deals you're working on. You keep your pipeline fresh and accurate. You don't want to have deals that are outdated, or you don't want to keep deals open for way too long. Close deals out that aren't advancing. Make sure the dates are appropriate, and get yourself a really good formula for forecasting. The best way to do this for everyone listening is to talk to your manager about it and figure out what works best in the role and company that you're in. Because what I've found is most sales leaders have different ideas and methodologies for how to do forecasting and how to manage the pipeline. So you'll want to spend some time in your one-on-one making sure you understand what the expectations are, and then go above and beyond the call of duty to deliver the best possible operations experience. It's going to help you stay organized. It's going to help leadership appreciate you more, I promise. You will get comments about how clean your pipeline is and how up-to-date your accounts are in the CRM. As you find out things during a deal cycle, or if you're cold calling and you find something out because you talked to someone on the phone, make a note of it because it will help you later on in that same account. And also, it's the right thing to do. Later on, if you leave the company, some other rep's going to come in and be trying to pick up where you left off, and it's helpful to have those notes. I know that's not all on you to have to worry about that stuff, but I think it will really help your brand in the industry to take the extra time and make sure your CRM is up to date. And that goes for all tools. I say CRMs generally speaking. There's all kinds of sales tools now, but make sure you're using those, updating those, and that your data is correct and accurate and easy for your leadership team to look at and understand where you're at in a specific deal or where you're at in a prospecting funnel, whatever it is. All right, the last one I want to share is a funny one. And this is more of a psychology principle than a mindset, but I think it's important that you think about this and adopt this as a mindset as a seller. And again, another sales leader shared this with me a few years ago. Most all these came from sales leaders and mentors of mine, by the way. That's why you hear me saying that over and over again. So this sales leader said, we pursue that which retreats. We pursue that which retreats. In other words, it's part of human psychology that when things start to pull away from us, we run at those things. Now, if things are pushing against us, we might pull away. So I don't know why that is. I'm not a psychologist. It just is what it is. We pursue that which retreats. And so think about this in your deals. Sometimes you're tempted in a deal cycle to follow up with your prospect every day. You didn't hear something today, follow up and follow up and follow up. And it's really annoying. So what I've found always happens, especially in the late stages of a deal cycle, is if I go quiet for a couple of days, it takes a leap of faith to do this, by the way. It's not comfortable at all. But if I go quiet for a couple of days, I'll notice that prospect will start to lean in towards me versus, being repelled by me if I'm following up every couple times a day. And I used to do that kind of stuff. I don't do that anymore. I try to treat my prospects like the adults that they are, and I don't follow up very often. I try to do it only when it's absolutely necessary. I know it can be really hard because a lot of times you have your sales manager in your ear asking for updates on things, and you've got to get those. So you need to find a balance in your deal cycles, in your role, and in your operating process. So remember that humans pursue that which retreats, and it will very much help you in those late stages of your deals. Anyway, that's just a couple of mindset shifts that I've had over the course of my career. Nothing crazy, but think about some of these and apply them into your own day-to-day. And I really hope that helps someone out there. Thanks for listening.